Little girl arrives at the hospital and says, "I just close my eyes and wait." Everyone panics before we dive into the story. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights of Pinewood Memorial Hospital cast a harsh glow over everything, making the already pale face of 7-year-old Emma Thompson look almost ghostly as she lay on the stretcher. Her small body seemed to disappear beneath the thin hospital blanket, her wide blue eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles above. Tears silently tracked down her cheeks, but she made no sound. Not a whimper, not a cry. Dr. Sarah Carter approached with a gentle smile that had comforted thousands of children during her 15 years in pediatric medicine. Something about this case, though, made her heart beat faster. The intake nurse had flagged Emma's file with unusual urgency. "Hello there, Emma." "I'm Dr. Carter," she said, keeping her voice light. "Can you tell me what's been hurting you?" Emma's eyes flicked toward the doctor, then back to the ceiling. Her mother, Melissa, stood anxiously at the foot of the bed, biting her lower lip, hands twisting the strap of her worn purse. "She's been having terrible stomach pains," Melissa explained, her voice cracking. "And she's so tired all the time. I thought it was just a bug, but it's been getting worse." "Doctor." Carter nodded, noting the yellowing tinge to Emma's skin and the unusual swelling in her abdomen. She gently placed her hand on Emma's forehead, feeling the slight fever. "Emma, sweetie," Dr. Carter tried again. "Can you tell me how you've been feeling? It's really important and it will help me make you feel better." The little girl finally turned her gaze fully toward the doctor. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "I just close my eyes and wait." The simple phrase hung in the air. Dr. Carter's pen froze mid-note. In the corner of the room, a nurse looked up sharply. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. "Wait for what, Emma?" Dr. Carter asked, keeping her voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. Emma just shook her head and turned back to the ceiling, tears continuing their silent journey down her temples and into her light brown hair. "Doctor." Carter placed a reassuring hand on Melissa's shoulder before guiding her a few steps away. "We need to run some tests right away," she said quietly. "How long has she been saying that phrase?" I don't know," Melissa stammered, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Maybe a couple of weeks. She whispered it one night when I was tucking her in. I thought she was just talking about falling asleep." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. Is it something serious? What does it mean?" "Doctor." Carter looked back at Emma, who had closed her eyes now, her small chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. The swelling in her abdomen was concerning, and those cryptic words. "I'm not sure yet," Dr. Carter answered honestly. "But we're going to find out. I need to take Emma for some urgent tests now." As the medical team prepared to move Emma, Melissa collapsed into a plastic chair in the corner, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. What had she missed? How long had her daughter been suffering in silence? Outside the room, Dr. Carter quickly assembled a team. 7-year-old female, presenting with abdominal distension, fatigue, and possible jaundice, she reported briskly. "Priority imaging and blood work, and call Dr. Hayes from gastroenterology. We need to figure out what's happening with this child, fast." As they wheeled Emma away, her eyes remained closed, her face a mask of quiet resignation that no child should ever have to wear. What secrets was this little girl keeping? What pain had she been silently enduring? And what did she mean by those haunting words? 3 months earlier, spring sunshine streamed through the windows of the modest Thompson home on Maple Street. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her small legs swinging as she concentrated on her drawing. Colored pencils scattered around her. She carefully added yellow petals to a flower that took up most of the page. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Melissa said, rushing past with a piece of toast in one hand and her car keys in the other. "I've got to run, or I'll be late for my shift. Robert will be here when you get home from school, okay?" Emma nodded without looking up. "Can we have spaghetti for dinner tonight?" "We'll see what Robert has planned," Melissa said, planting a quick kiss on Emma's head. "Be good at school today." The door closed behind Melissa with a familiar thud that echoed through the quiet house. Emma sighed. adding one final touch to her drawing before carefully placing it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a ladybug, a birthday gift from Mrs. Jenkins next door. At Pinewood Elementary, Emma sat quietly during morning lessons, occasionally rubbing her stomach when she thought no one was watching. During recess, she declined to join the kickball game, choosing instead to sit under the big oak tree in the schoolyard. "Aren't you playing today, Emma?" Miss Wilson asked, crouching beside her. "My tummy feels funny," Emma admitted, "like butterflies, but not the good kind." Miss Wilson placed a gentle hand on Emma's forehead. "No fever. Maybe it's just something you ate. Do you want to go to the nurse?" Emma shook her head quickly. "No, I'm okay. I can wait until it goes away." After school, Emma walked the 3 blocks home, dragging her feet a little more than usual. Robert, her stepdad, was sitting on the porch steps scanning job listings on his phone. "Hey, kiddo," he said, barely looking up. "How was school?" "Fine," Emma replied, her hand instinctively going to her stomach again. "My tummy still feels funny." Robert finally glanced up, frowning slightly. "Probably just gas. Did you eat your lunch today?" "Some of it," Emma said, not mentioning that the thought of food had made her stomach churn worse. "Well, there you go. You're hungry. We'll have dinner when your mom gets home." He returned to his phone, conversation over. Emma went inside and curled up on her bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flopsy. "It'll go away," she whispered to the worn toy. "I just have to wait." Next door, elderly Mrs. Jenkins was tending to her garden when she spotted Emma through the bedroom window. The little girl had always been on the quiet side, but lately, Mrs. Jenkins had noticed she seemed even more withdrawn. The vibrant child who used to help her plant marigolds every spring had been replaced by a shadow that moved slowly from house to school and back again. That evening, as Melissa microwaved leftovers instead of making the promised spaghetti, Emma pushed the food around her plate, taking only a few small bites. "You need to eat to grow, Emma," Melissa said, exhaustion evident in her voice after her 8-hour shift at the supermarket checkout. "I'm not very hungry," Emma replied softly. "At least eat a few more bites," Melissa insisted. "I don't have time to make something else." Robert, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stood up. "I'm going out for a bit," he announced, grabbing his jacket. "But we just sat down," Melissa began, but the door had already closed behind him. Emma watched her mother's face fall, saw the weight of worry settle deeper into the lines around her eyes. Not wanting to add to her burden, Emma forced down a few more bites, ignoring the discomfort spreading through her abdomen. Later, as Melissa tucked her in, Emma clutched Mr. Flopsy tightly. "Mom, when does a tummy ache mean something's really wrong?" Melissa froze, then smoothed Emma's hair. "Is your stomach still bothering you, honey?" Emma nodded, tears suddenly welling in her eyes. "It's probably just a bug going around," Melissa said, kissing her forehead. "If it still hurts tomorrow, we'll see about a doctor, okay?" But tomorrow would bring more bills, more shifts, more job rejections for Robert, and Emma's quiet complaint would be forgotten in the storm of adult worries. As Melissa turned out the light, Emma whispered, "I just close my eyes and wait for it to stop." But this time, Melissa was already down the hall, too far away to hear the words that would soon take on a much darker meaning. The morning bell at Pinewood Elementary rang cheerfully, but Emma moved slowly through the hallway, her backpack feeling heavier than usual. In Miss Wilson's third-grade classroom, the day began with math worksheets, the numbers swimming before Emma's eyes as she tried to concentrate. "Are you feeling all right, Emma?" Miss Wilson asked quietly, noticing the girl's unusual pallor as she collected the papers. "I'm okay," Emma replied automatically, the answer she'd been giving for weeks now. Miss Wilson wasn't convinced. The bright, creative student who once eagerly shared her colorful drawings had grown increasingly withdrawn. Her artwork, once bursting with vibrant flowers and smiling suns, now featured muted colors and simpler designs that required less effort. "You know you can talk to me if something's bothering you," Miss Wilson said, placing a gentle hand on Emma's desk. Emma nodded, forcing a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. During art class, while other children chattered excitedly about their projects, Emma sat alone, carefully drawing in a small notebook she kept separate from her school supplies. Miss Wilson noticed how she would shield the pages whenever anyone walked by, quickly closing it if someone came too close. At recess, the spring sunshine beckoned most children to the playground, but Emma found a quiet spot beneath a large oak tree, her knees pulled up to her chest. The pressure seemed to help with the constant ache in her stomach. "Don't you want to play, Emma?" asked Lily, her usual recess buddy. "Not today," Emma replied, wincing slightly as she shifted position. "You never want to play anymore," Lily pouted before running off to join the jump rope game. Emma watched the other children, their laughter and energy so distant from how she felt. She opened her secret notebook and continued a drawing she'd started that morning. A girl lying in bed surrounded by strange, shadowy figures. Around the girl's stomach, Emma drew what looked like tiny monsters with sharp teeth. Physical education class that afternoon proved especially challenging. As the children ran laps around the gymnasium, Emma felt the room begin to spin. The squeaking of sneakers on the polished floor grew distant, replaced by a rushing sound in her ears. "Emma?" Coach Miller's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Emma, are you okay?" The next thing she knew, Emma was sitting on a bench, Coach Miller kneeling in front of her with a concerned expression. "I think you almost fainted there, kiddo. Should we call your mom?" "No," Emma said quickly, panic rising in her chest. "Please don't. Mom's working and she can't leave. I'm okay now, really." "You don't look okay," Coach Miller said frankly. "You're pale as a ghost." "It happens sometimes," Emma admitted quietly. "I just close my eyes and wait for it to pass." The coach's brow furrowed at this troubling statement. "Has a doctor checked you out, Emma?" Emma looked down at her hands. "Mom says we'll go if it gets worse." "And has it gotten worse?" Emma hesitated before answering. "Maybe, but Mom works so hard and she's always tired, and doctors cost a lot of money." Coach Miller exchanged a glance with Miss Wilson, who had come to check on her student. The two educators shared a silent moment of concern. "Why don't you sit out for the rest of class?" Coach Miller suggested. "Miss Wilson, perhaps Emma could go with you." Back in the empty classroom, Miss Wilson sat beside Emma. "Would you like to draw for a while? That always seems to help you feel better." Emma nodded, reaching for her secret notebook. She hesitated, then made a decision. "Miss Wilson, can you keep a secret?" "That depends on the secret, Emma. If you're in danger or someone is hurting you, I would need to tell someone who can help." "Nobody's hurting me," Emma said quickly. "It's just these." She opened her notebook to reveal pages of drawings, her stomach filled with what she called monsters, dark clouds hovering over her home, and repeated images of herself lying in bed with eyes closed tight. "The monsters in my tummy are getting bigger," Emma explained matter-of-factly, "and sometimes they bite." Miss Wilson felt a chill run down her spine. "Emma, I think we should call your mom. These monsters might be your way of telling us you're really sick." "Please don't," Emma begged, tears filling her eyes. "Mom will worry and Robert will get angry because of the doctor bills. I can handle it. I just close my eyes and wait." Miss Wilson took Emma's hand, her heart breaking for this child bearing adult worries. "I won't call today," she promised reluctantly. "But I'm going to check on you tomorrow, and if you're not feeling better, we might need to talk to your mom. Deal?" Emma nodded, relieved. Deal. What neither of them knew was that by tomorrow, the monsters would grow much stronger, and waiting would no longer be an option. The gentle knock on the Thompsons' front door came just as Emma was settling down to watch cartoons after school. Robert, who had been napping on the couch, grumbled as he got up to answer it. "Hello, Robert." Mrs. Jenkins's cheerful voice drifted in from the porch. "I made some extra chicken soup today and thought Emma might enjoy some." Emma perked up at the sound of the elderly neighbor's voice. Mrs. Jenkins always seemed to appear with homemade treats on days when Emma felt her worst, almost as if she had a sixth sense for when comfort was needed. "Come in, Mrs. J," Robert said, stepping aside. He lowered his voice, though Emma could still hear him. "Thanks for this. I haven't had time to go grocery shopping yet, Mrs." Jenkins entered the living room, her silver hair neatly pinned back, carrying a large container of steaming soup. Her kind eyes immediately focused on Emma, taking in the girl's pallor and the way she sat curled into herself on the armchair. "Well, hello there, sunshine," Mrs. Jenkins said, setting the soup down on the coffee table. "I thought you might like to try my special soup. It has magical healing powers, you know." Despite her discomfort, Emma smiled. Mrs. Jenkins always told stories about magic hiding in ordinary things. Flowers that whispered secrets, trees that remembered the past, and apparently, soup with healing powers. "Thank you," Emma said softly. "It smells really good." Mrs. Jenkins sat down next to Emma, her observant eyes noticing how the child's sleeve rode up, revealing small purple spots on her arm. "My goodness, what happened here?" she asked, gently touching Emma's arm. Emma looked down at the bruises which had appeared a few days ago. "Purple butterfly kisses," she said with a shrug. "That's what I call them. They just show up sometimes." Mrs. Jenkins and Robert exchanged concerned glances. "Has she been falling down?" Mrs. Jenkins asked Robert quietly. "Not that I've seen," he replied, frowning at the marks. "Emma, did you hurt yourself at school?" Emma shook her head. "They don't even hurt. They're just there." Robert ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a gesture of helplessness that was becoming all too familiar. "I'll tell Melissa when she gets home." Mrs. Jenkins nodded, though her expression suggested she wasn't entirely confident this would lead to action. She turned back to Emma with a bright smile. "Why don't we have some of this magic soup while it's hot? Then perhaps you'd like to help me in my garden for a little while." Emma nodded eagerly, despite the persistent ache in her stomach. Mrs. Jenkins' garden was her favorite place, a colorful sanctuary filled with flowers, herbs, and secret hiding spots perfect for a child's imagination. Later, as Emma carefully watered the marigolds under Mrs. Jenkins's supervision, the elderly woman observed how slowly the child moved, how she paused frequently to catch her breath. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Jenkins began carefully, "have you been feeling poorly for a while now?" Emma kept her eyes on the flowers. "My tummy feels funny most days, and I get really tired. Have you told your mother?" "She works so hard," Emma replied, her voice small. "And she always looks so worried about bills and stuff. I don't want to make her more sad." Mrs. Jenkins's heart ached at the child's words. "But your mother would want to know if you're not feeling well, sweetheart. That's part of a parent's job." Emma set down the watering can, her small face suddenly serious. "Mrs. Jenkins, can I show you something?" The elderly woman nodded, and Emma reached into her pocket, pulling out her small notebook. She flipped through several pages before stopping on a drawing of what appeared to be her house. Inside the drawing house, a small figure lay in bed surrounded by swirling shadows, while two larger figures stood with their backs turned. "This is me," Emma explained, pointing to the bed-bound figure. "And these are the monsters in my tummy." She turned the page to show more detailed drawings of what looked like small, spiky creatures. They started out tiny, but they keep growing. Mrs. Jenkins struggled to keep her expression neutral, though alarm bells were ringing in her mind. "These are very expressive drawings, Emma. How long have you been feeling these monsters?" "A long time now," Emma said vaguely, in the way children often describe time. "But they're getting hungrier." That evening, after Emma went inside for dinner, Mrs. Jenkins stood at her kitchen window, watching as Melissa's car pulled into the driveway. The weary mother dragged herself from the vehicle, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Mrs. Jenkins made a decision. Tomorrow she would speak to Melissa directly about Emma's symptoms. The bruises, the fatigue, the stomach pain. Something was seriously wrong, and it couldn't wait any longer. As darkness fell over Maple Street, Emma lay in bed, her secret notebook clutched to her chest, eyes squeezed shut as she whispered her now familiar mantra. "I just close my eyes and wait." But in Mrs. Jenkins' house next door, a worried neighbor was deciding that waiting was no longer an option. The next morning, Melissa was running late as usual, hurriedly packing Emma's lunch while simultaneously trying to find her work badge. Emma sat at the kitchen table, picking at a bowl of cereal she had barely touched. "Emma, please eat something," Melissa urged, glancing at the clock. You need your energy for school. I'm not really hungry, Emma replied softly, pushing the bowl away. Melissa paused her frantic search to really look at her daughter. In the harsh morning light, she couldn't ignore how Emma's clothes seemed to hang on her small frame, how dark circles had formed under her once bright eyes, or how her skin had taken on a yellowish tinge. Emma, she said, kneeling beside her daughter's chair, are you still having those stomach aches? Before Emma could answer, a knock at the door interrupted them. Melissa opened it to find Mrs. Jenkins standing on the porch, determination evident in her usually gentle face. Good morning, Melissa. I need to speak with you about Emma, the elderly woman said firmly. I believe she needs to see a doctor, soon. Melissa glanced back at Emma, who was now staring down at her hands. Mrs. Jenkins, I appreciate your concern, but we're fine. I'm actually running late for work. Melissa, Mrs. Jenkins interrupted, her voice lower. Emma has bruises she can't explain. She's lost weight. She's in pain. These aren't things that will just go away on their own. Something in the neighbor's tone made Melissa's heart skip a beat. She looked again at her daughter, seeing her with new eyes, not through the rushed glances of a busy morning, but as she truly was. The realization of how much Emma had changed hit her like a physical blow. Emma, honey, Melissa said, returning to her daughter. Why didn't you tell me you were feeling so bad? Emma's lower lip trembled. You're always so tired and worried about money. I didn't want to make it worse. The simple statement broke something in Melissa's heart. Her 7-year-old daughter had been suffering in silence, bearing an adult's burden of worry. I'll call in sick today, Melissa decided, pulling out her phone. We're going to the doctor. But what about the bills? Emma asked in a small voice that revealed how much she'd overheard of her parents' late-night conversations. Melissa swallowed hard. Some things are more important than bills, sweetheart. You're more important. As Melissa made the call to her supervisor, Mrs. Jenkins quietly helped Emma get ready, whispering encouragement to the frightened child. Outside, dark clouds gathered, mirroring the growing sense of foreboding that hung over the small house on Maple Street. What they didn't know was that their worries were justified. The visit to the doctor that day would only be the beginning of a journey none of them were prepared for. The waiting room at Pinewood Medical Clinic was crowded with coughing patients and fussy children. Emma sat between Melissa and Mrs. Jenkins, her small legs dangling from the chair, not quite reaching the floor. Her hands fidgeted nervously with the zipper of her jacket. Mrs. Thompson, a nurse called from the doorway, clipboard in hand. Dr. Wilson will see Emma now. Emma tensed, her fingers gripping Melissa's hand. Are they going to give me shots? She whispered. I don't know, sweetie, Melissa answered honestly. But if they do, I'll be right there with you. Dr. Wilson was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a bow tie that made Emma smile despite her nervousness. He examined her gently, asking questions in a friendly voice that helped her relax. And these bruises, he asked, looking at the purple marks on her arms. Do you remember how you got them? Emma shook her head. They just appear like magic. Purple butterfly kisses. The doctor's expression remained pleasant, but Melissa noticed a flicker of concern in his eyes. He pressed carefully on Emma's abdomen, noting when she winced. We're going to need some blood tests, Dr. Wilson said, addressing Melissa while keeping his tone light for Emma's benefit. And an ultrasound of her abdomen. Is something seriously wrong? Melissa asked, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. I'd rather not speculate until we have the results, the doctor replied carefully. But I'd like to get these tests done today if possible. In the lab, Emma bravely held still for the blood draw, tears silently streaming down her face as she stared at the ceiling. I just close my eyes and wait, she whispered, her mantra audible to the lab technician who glanced questioningly at Melissa. Meanwhile, at the Thompson house, Robert was frantically cleaning. The call from Melissa about Emma's condition had shaken him from his usual lethargy. He scrubbed the kitchen, cleared out old food from the refrigerator, and even tackled the bathroom as if cleanliness could somehow contribute to Emma's recovery. As he worked, his phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Thompson? This is Catherine Maxwell from Lakeside Industries. Regarding your interview yesterday, Robert's heart raced. He'd almost forgotten about the job interview, his first promising lead in months. We'd like to offer you the position, the woman continued. The starting salary is $16 per hour, with benefits beginning after 90 days. We need someone to start on Monday. I accept, Robert said immediately, relief washing over him. Thank you for this opportunity. As he hung up, the front door opened. Melissa entered, carrying a sleeping Emma in her arms. The expression on her face told Robert everything he needed to know. How bad is it? He asked quietly, helping her settle Emma on the couch. They're running more tests, Melissa replied, her voice hollow. The doctor said we should have brought her in sooner. Her eyes filled with tears. How did we miss this, Robert? How did we not see how sick she was? Before Robert could answer, Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Mom, she called weakly. My tummy really hurts now. As Robert rushed to find the children's pain reliever the doctor had recommended, Melissa knelt beside her daughter, smoothing back her hair. I know, baby, but we're going to make it better now, I promise. What Melissa didn't know was how difficult that promise would be to keep, or that within 24 hours, Emma would be fighting for her life at Pinewood Memorial Hospital. The shrill ring of the telephone cut through the pre-dawn darkness of the Thompson home. Melissa fumbled for the receiver, her heart pounding with the particular dread that comes from middle-of-the-night calls. Mrs. Thompson, this is Dr. Wilson. I've received Emma's preliminary test results. His voice was grave. You need to bring her to Pinewood Memorial Hospital immediately. The emergency department is expecting you. Melissa's blood turned to ice. What's wrong with her? Her liver enzyme levels are dangerously high and her blood work shows several concerning abnormalities. Please, don't delay. Robert was already up, pulling on clothes and grabbing car keys. Melissa rushed to Emma's room, finding her daughter curled into a tight ball, whimpering in her sleep. When she touched Emma's forehead, the skin was burning hot. Emma, sweetie, wake up. We need to go to the hospital. Emma's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. The monsters are really angry tonight, Mom, she whispered. They're biting hard. The drive to the hospital was a blur of rain-slicked streets and tense silence, broken only by Emma's occasional whimpers from the back seat. Robert drove with white-knuckled determination, while Melissa whispered reassurances she didn't believe herself. In the emergency department, things moved with alarming speed. Emma was quickly taken to a treatment room, where nurses attached monitors and started an IV line. Dr. Sarah Carter, the pediatric specialist on call, examined Emma with efficient, gentle movements. Her abdomen is distended and there's significant jaundice, Dr. Carter noted to the team. I want a complete liver panel, abdominal ultrasound, and let's prep for a possible CT scan. Melissa and Robert stood pressed against the wall, watching the medical team work with the helpless fear that only parents of a seriously ill child can know. What's happening to her? Robert finally asked, his voice breaking. Dr. Carter looked up, her expression compassionate but serious. Emma's liver isn't functioning properly. We need to determine why, and quickly. As a nurse drew more blood from Emma's arm, the little girl turned her face away, tears streaming silently. I just close my eyes and wait, she whispered. The phrase, spoken so matter-of-factly, caused the room to still for a moment. Dr. Carter approached Emma's bedside. Emma, what do you mean by that? What are you waiting for? Emma shrugged weakly. For the pain to go away. For the monsters to sleep. Sometimes if I'm really quiet and still, they stop biting for a while. Dr. Fur. Carter exchanged a troubled glance with the nurse. To Melissa, she asked quietly, How long has she been saying this? I don't know exactly, Melissa admitted, shame washing over her. A few weeks. She mentioned monsters in her stomach, but I thought it was just her imagination. I didn't realize. Her voice broke. Dr. Carter's next question sent a chill through the room. Has Emma had access to any medications at home? Or any chemicals, plants, or berries she might have ingested? No, of course not, Robert replied defensively. We keep everything locked up. What about at a neighbor's house or at school? Melissa suddenly remembered Mrs. Jenkins's garden, where Emma spent so much time. Could there be something there? Before she could voice this thought, Emma's monitors began to beep rapidly. The little girl's eyes rolled back, her small body going rigid and then beginning to convulse. "She's seizing. Push 0.2 meters of lorazepam," Dr. Carter ordered sharply. "And get me an operating room on standby. We may need to place a shunt if there's increased intracranial pressure." As the medical team worked frantically to stabilize Emma, a hospital security officer appeared at the door with a stern-faced woman in a business suit. "I'm Linda Ramirez from Child Protective Services," she announced. "We need to ask you some questions about your daughter's condition." Robert's face went pale. "CPS? But we haven't done anything wrong." In that chaotic moment, as Emma fought for her life and strangers prepared to question their parenting, Melissa and Robert realized that their world had completely shattered, and the pieces might never fit back together again. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. As Melissa sat rigidly in an uncomfortable plastic chair, Robert pacing nearby. Linda Ramirez from Child Protective Services sat across from them, her notepad open, expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Thompson, when did you first notice Emma was unwell?" Ms. Ramirez asked, pen poised. Melissa twisted her wedding ring anxiously. "She complained of stomach aches on and off for a few months. We thought it was just normal kid stuff, maybe anxiety about school or a minor bug." "And the bruising? When did that start?" "I don't know exactly," Melissa admitted, her voice small. "Emma wears long sleeves most of the time. Mrs. Jenkins, our neighbor, pointed them out a few days ago." Ms. Ramirez made another note. "Why did you wait so long to seek medical attention?" Robert stopped pacing, his face flushed. "We didn't know it was this serious. Do you think we would have waited if we knew our daughter was this sick?" "Robert, please," Melissa pleaded, reaching for his hand. Turning back to Ms. Ramirez, she continued, "I work 2 jobs. Our health insurance has a high deductible. We were worried about the cost, but we never thought—" Her voice broke. "I never imagined it could be something this bad." The social worker's expression softened slightly. "I understand financial concerns, Mrs. Thompson, but a child's health—" "You don't understand anything about us," Robert interrupted, his voice low but intense. "You waltz in here making assumptions when we're terrified for our daughter. We made a mistake. We should have brought her in sooner. But we love Emma more than anything in this world." Before Ms. Ramirez could respond, the waiting room doors opened, and Mrs. Jenkins hurried in, looking worried but determined. "I came as soon as I got your message," she said to Melissa. "How is Emma?" "We don't know yet," Melissa replied, grateful for the elderly woman's presence. "They're still running tests." Mrs. Jenkins noticed Ms. Ramirez and her notepad, understanding immediately. "You must be from social services," she said, sitting down firmly beside Melissa. "I'm Helen Jenkins, the Thompsons' neighbor for the past 9 years, and I can tell you without hesitation that these are good parents who adore their daughter." Ms. Ramirez studied the elderly woman. "Mrs. Jenkins, have you observed anything unusual about Emma's home environment or her parents' behavior?" "The only unusual thing," Mrs. Jenkins replied firmly, "is how hard these 2 work to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Melissa is at the supermarket all day, then cleans offices at night. Robert has been job hunting relentlessly while caring for Emma after school." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "What I've observed is a family doing their best in difficult circumstances. Have they made mistakes? Yes, who hasn't? But there isn't a shred of doubt in my mind about how much they love that child." The conversation was interrupted when Dr. Carter appeared, looking tired but less tense than before. "Emma is stable now," she announced, bringing visible relief to everyone. "We've managed to control the seizure and start treatment for the liver inflammation." "Do you know what caused it?" Melissa asked desperately. "We're still determining the exact cause, but we found evidence of a toxic reaction," Dr. Carter explained. "Has Emma had access to any plants or berries? Possibly something she might have eaten repeatedly over time." Mrs. Jenkins gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "My garden," she whispered. "She helps me tend my garden almost every day." As understanding dawned on their faces, Robert and Melissa exchanged heartbroken looks. Could the answer have been right next door all along? And somewhere in the hospital, Emma slept fitfully, her small body fighting battles that no child should have to face, still waiting for the monsters to leave her alone. Mrs. Jenkins's garden had always been a source of neighborhood pride, a vibrant patchwork of flowers, herbs, and ornamental plants that attracted butterflies and admiring glances in equal measure. Now, it was being methodically photographed and sampled by a stern-faced botanist from the Poison Control Center. "I never imagined," Mrs. Jenkins repeated, watching from her porch steps, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I've been gardening for 60 years. I know which plants are toxic." I warned Emma never to eat anything without asking. Dr. Nathan Hayes, the pediatric gastroenterologist called in on Emma's case, examined the photographs on his tablet. "Children are naturally curious," he said gently, and Emma may not have realized what she was doing. Back at the hospital, Emma had finally stabilized enough for a longer conversation. In her room, surrounded by monitoring equipment and with an IV drip steadily delivering medication, she looked impossibly small against the white hospital sheets. "Emma, sweetheart," Melissa said, holding her daughter's hand carefully to avoid disturbing the IV. "We need to ask you something important. Did you ever eat any berries or leaves from Mrs. Jenkins's garden?" Emma's eyes widened with fear. "Am I in trouble?" No, Robert reassured her quickly. "We just need to know so the doctors can help you feel better." Emma looked down at her blanket, her fingers plucking nervously at the fabric. "The red berries," she finally admitted in a small voice. "The ones that look like tiny cherries." Dr. Hayes nodded gravely. "Likely Japanese yew. The leaves and seeds are highly toxic, especially if consumed regularly over time." "But why, Emma?" Melissa asked, bewildered. "Why would you eat those?" Emma's lower lip trembled. "My tummy hurt, and I heard Mrs. Jenkins tell her friend that some plants can be medicine. The berries looked like the medicine you take for your back pain, Mom. I thought they might help." The simple childish logic was devastating in its innocence. Emma had been trying to self-medicate her pain, not understanding the danger. "Oh, Emma," Melissa whispered, fighting back tears. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. "While this explains the toxic reaction, it doesn't account for all of Emma's symptoms. The elevated liver enzymes started before the poisoning, according to these earlier test results." He turned his tablet to show them a chart with numbers and dates that meant nothing to Melissa and Robert, but clearly concerned the doctor. "I believe Emma may have an underlying liver condition that made her more susceptible to the toxins. We need to run more specialized tests." As if on cue, a nurse appeared with Nurse Joy, a cheerful woman wearing scrubs decorated with cartoon animals. "Time for your ultrasound, Emma," Nurse Joy announced brightly. "We're going to take pictures of your insides, like superhero X-ray vision." Emma managed a small smile at this, though fear still lingered in her eyes. "Can I bring Mr. Flopsy?" she asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Of course Mr. Flopsy has ultrasound clearance," Nurse Joy assured her with a wink. As they prepared to wheel Emma away, Melissa noticed a small notebook peeking out from under Emma's pillow, the secret drawing book Mrs. Jenkins had mentioned. "What's this, sweetheart?" she asked, gently pulling it out. "My monster book," Emma explained matter-of-factly. "I draw the monsters that live in my tummy so they'll stay in the book instead of inside me." Melissa carefully opened the notebook, Robert looking over her shoulder. The pages revealed a child's visualization of pain and illness, spiky creatures with sharp teeth, dark clouds hovering over a small stick figure, and increasingly detailed drawings of what Emma imagined was happening inside her body. One page in particular caught their attention, a drawing of Emma lying in bed, eyes firmly closed, while around her swirled monsters, storm clouds, and disembodied frowning faces. At the bottom, in careful printing, Emma had written, "I just close my eyes and wait." The simple phrase that had first alarmed Dr. Carter now revealed its heartbreaking meaning. Emma's only coping mechanism for pain she didn't understand and couldn't escape. As Nurse Joy wheeled Emma away for her ultrasound, Melissa clutched the notebook to her chest. A physical record of all the suffering her daughter had endured in silence, while she had been too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed to truly see. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with muted conversations and the clinking of utensils as Melissa stared into her untouched cup of coffee. Across the table, Robert methodically ate a sandwich, his eyes distant. "I got the job," he said suddenly, breaking their lengthy silence. Melissa looked up, momentarily confused. "What job?" "Lakeside Industries. They called yesterday. $16 an hour. Benefits after 90 days. His voice was flat, devoid of the excitement such news would normally bring. "I'm supposed to start Monday." That's wonderful," Melissa said, trying to summon enthusiasm. "We've been waiting for this break. They want me full-time, no flexibility." Robert set down his sandwich. "How can I start a new job when Emma is here? But how can I turn it down when we need the money for her medical bills?" Before Melissa could respond, Dr. Hayes appeared at their table carrying a tablet and a folder of papers. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, may I join you?" They nodded, tension immediately returning to their postures. "Emma's latest tests have given us a clearer picture," Dr. Hayes began, his tone carefully measured. "The good news is that we've identified the primary issues and have a treatment plan." "And the bad news?" Robert asked, bracing himself. "Emma has a condition called autoimmune hepatitis. It's a disease where the body's immune system attacks the liver cells." Dr. Hayes turned his tablet to show them a diagram. This was likely developing for some time before the toxic exposure from the berries, which accelerated the damage. Is it curable?" Melissa's voice trembled. "It's manageable with medication, but it's a chronic condition," Dr. Hayes explained gently. "With proper treatment, most patients can lead normal lives. The immediate concern is helping her liver recover from the acute damage caused by the toxins." Robert ran a hand through his hair. "How did she get this? Is it genetic?" "The exact cause is unknown. It could be genetic predisposition triggered by an environmental factor, or possibly a reaction to a virus she had in the past." Dr. Hayes leaned forward. "What's important now is that we've caught it, and we can treat it." "Will she need a liver transplant?" Melissa asked, voicing her deepest fear. "We're not at that point," Dr. Hayes assured her. "With medication to suppress the immune response and supportive care, we expect her liver to recover significantly. But she'll need close monitoring, regular medication, and dietary changes going forward." The magnitude of what this meant, a lifetime of medical appointments, medications, and vigilance, settled over them like a heavy blanket. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Hayes continued, his expression softening. "Emma has been talking with our child psychologist. It seems she's been experiencing symptoms for longer than we initially thought, possibly 6 months or more." "6 months?" Melissa gasped. "But why wouldn't she tell us?" "Children often lack the vocabulary to express what they're feeling," Dr. Hayes explained. "And according to Emma, she didn't want to worry you because, in her words, Mommy works too hard already and Daddy is sad about not having a job." The simple explanation hit them like a physical blow. Their 7-year-old had been protecting them, bearing her pain silently to spare them additional worry. As they absorbed this heartbreaking revelation, Linda Ramirez from Child Protective Services approached their table, her expression unreadable. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I've completed my initial assessment," she announced. "Given the circumstances and the information from Emma's medical team, I see no evidence of willful neglect. However," her tone grew serious, "we will be implementing a family support plan with regular check-ins to ensure Emma's medical needs are being met, going forward." Robert opened his mouth to protest, but Melissa squeezed his hand, silently urging him to accept this compromise. "We understand," Melissa said quietly. "We want whatever helps Emma." As Ms. Ramirez left, Dr. Hayes slid a paper across the table, an estimate of Emma's hospital stay and ongoing treatment costs. The number at the bottom, even after insurance, made Melissa's breath catch. "There are financial assistance programs," Dr. Hayes said kindly, noting their expressions. And payment plans. Our social worker can help you navigate the options. Robert stared at the paper, then at Melissa, a silent communication passing between them. Whatever it took, second jobs, payment plans, selling possessions, they would find a way. For Emma. When can we see her? Robert asked, his voice steadier now. She's back from her tests, and I think she could use her parents right now, Dr. Hayes said with a small smile. She's been very brave, but she's still just a little girl who wants her mom and dad. As they hurried back to Emma's room, Melissa and Robert held hands tightly, united in their determination that never again would their daughter feel she needed to suffer in silence. Emma's hospital room was quieter now that most of the monitoring equipment had been reduced to just a single IV line and a heart rate monitor. Colorful drawings from her classmates papered one wall. Miss Wilson had mobilized the entire third grade to create cheerful messages for their absent friend. Melissa sat by the bed, reading aloud from Emma's favorite book about a rabbit detective, while Emma drowsily followed along, the medication making her eyelids heavy. Robert had reluctantly left for his first day at Lakeside Industries, his new boss having granted him a modified schedule that allowed him to work while still spending afternoons at the hospital. Dr. Carter entered with a tablet in hand, her expression causing Melissa to set down the book mid-sentence. "How are her latest numbers?" Melissa asked, having quickly learned the medical terminology that now governed their lives. "Better in some areas, but—" Dr. Carter hesitated, glancing at Emma, who was now fully alert, sensing the change in atmosphere. "I'd like to discuss the latest test results. Perhaps we could step outside." "No," Emma said suddenly, her voice small but determined. "I want to know too. It's my body. Doctor." Carter and Melissa exchanged looks, both recognizing the wisdom in Emma's request. At 7 years old, she had earned the right to understand what was happening to her. "All right, Emma," Dr. Carter agreed, pulling up a chair. "The medicine is helping your liver, but not as quickly as we'd hoped. Your immune system is still attacking your liver cells, even though we've increased your medication. The monsters are still biting," Emma translated in her own terms, nodding as if this confirmed what she already felt. "Yes, that's one way to think of it." Dr. Carter smiled gently. "We're going to try a different medication, a stronger one, to tell those monsters to stop. Will it make me better?" Dr. Carter chose her words carefully. "It will help, but we need to be patient. Your liver needs time to heal." What she didn't say, but what Melissa read clearly in the doctor's expression, was that Emma's condition had reached a more critical stage. The medication they'd tried first wasn't working well enough, and they were moving to more aggressive treatment options. As if summoned by the tension in the room, Nurse Joy appeared with a tray containing new medication vials. "Special delivery for Miss Emma," she announced cheerfully. "And look who I found wandering the halls looking for you." Behind her stood Mrs. Jenkins, carrying a small potted plant with cheerful yellow flowers, and, to Emma's delight, Miss Wilson with a thick folder tucked under her arm. "My 2 favorite visitors," Emma exclaimed, momentarily brightening. While Nurse Joy administered the new medication, Miss Wilson sat at the edge of the bed. "The class misses you terribly," she said, opening the folder to reveal worksheets, stories, and more drawings. "So I thought maybe we could do a little school right here whenever you're feeling up to it." "I'd like that," Emma nodded, though her eyes were already growing heavy from the new medication. Mrs. Jenkins placed the plant on the windowsill. "Marigolds," she explained. "Perfectly safe, just bright and happy. I thought they might remind you of our gardening days." As Emma drifted off to sleep, the adults gathered in the hallway, their expressions grave. "Her liver function tests aren't improving as hoped," Dr. Carter explained quietly. "If this new medication doesn't work, we may need to consider more invasive options." "How invasive?" Melissa asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Dr. Carter said gently. "The new treatment might be exactly what she needs." Miss Wilson squeezed Melissa's hand. "The school is organizing a fundraiser for Emma's medical expenses. The whole community wants to help. And I've been researching that assistance program Dr. Hayes mentioned," Mrs. Jenkins added. "I can help you with the paperwork." Melissa nodded gratefully, overwhelmed by their kindness. As the others departed, she returned to Emma's bedside, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall in uneasy sleep. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Boss, let me leave early. Heading to hospital now." "How is she?" Melissa stared at the screen, unsure how to convey the complexity of their situation in a text message. Before she could respond, Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mom," she whispered, "I had a dream about the monsters." "Was it scary?" Melissa asked, smoothing back Emma's hair. "No," Emma said thoughtfully. "They were leaving. They said they were sorry for hurting me." She looked up with unexpected clarity in her eyes. "Do you think that means I'm getting better?" Melissa felt a lump form in her throat. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." But as Emma drifted back to sleep, the monitors tracking her vital signs told a different story. One where the monsters weren't leaving, but gathering strength for their most vicious attack yet. The harsh buzz of Melissa's phone jolted her awake in the hospital's family waiting room, where she had finally succumbed to exhaustion in an uncomfortable vinyl chair. The screen showed 2:37 a.m. and Robert's name. "Where are you?" she asked immediately, disoriented. "Still at work," Robert replied, his voice strained. "The night shift supervisor called in sick and they asked me to stay. Double pay, Melissa. We need it for the bills." "But you've already worked 16 hours, Melissa protested. "I know, but—" His voice was cut off by the appearance of Dr. Carter rushing toward Melissa, her face tense. "I have to go," Melissa said quickly. "Something's happening with Emma." She followed Dr. Carter at a near run through the hospital corridors, fear clutching at her heart. "Emma's liver function has deteriorated rapidly in the last hour," Dr. Carter explained as they hurried. "Her body is struggling to process toxins and it's affecting her brain function." "What does that mean?" Melissa asked, breathless with fear. "She's experiencing hepatic encephalopathy, confusion caused by toxins building up. We need to start emergency treatment immediately." They reached Emma's room to find a flurry of activity. Nurses adjusting IV lines, a resident doctor checking vital signs, and at the center of it all, Emma, awake but clearly disoriented, her eyes unfocused and her speech slurred. "Where's the rabbit?" Emma was asking repeatedly, her small hands plucking at the sheets. "He was here, the talking rabbit." "I'm here, baby," Melissa said, rushing to her side. "Mom's here." Emma looked at her with confusion. "You're not the rabbit," she said with such genuine disappointment that despite everything, Melissa almost smiled. "No, I'm your mom. Mr. Flopsy is right here," she said, tucking the stuffed rabbit under Emma's arm. Dr. Carter pulled Melissa aside as the team continued working. "We're starting her on lactulose to help remove the toxins from her blood, and we're moving her to the pediatric ICU for closer monitoring." "Is she going to—" Melissa couldn't finish the question. "She's very sick," Dr. Carter admitted, "but children are remarkably resilient. The next 24 hours will be critical." As Emma was being prepared for transfer, her confusion worsened. "The monsters are having a party," she announced to no one in particular. "They're dancing on my liver." The childish description of her condition was heartbreakingly accurate. The autoimmune cells were indeed attacking her liver with renewed vigor, celebrating their temporary victory over the medications meant to suppress them. In the pediatric ICU, Emma was settled into a room with even more monitoring equipment. The atmosphere was more intense here, the nurses moving with quiet efficiency, the beeping of machines a constant reminder of how precarious life could be. Melissa called Robert again, her voice breaking as she explained the situation. "You need to come now," she finished. "I'm scared, Robert." "I'm on my way," he promised, all thoughts of overtime pay forgotten. Alone with Emma, who had finally fallen into a restless sleep, Melissa found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, praying. Not with formal words or rituals, but with the desperate hope of a mother who would do anything, believe anything to save her child. Her silent vigil was interrupted when Emma suddenly opened her eyes, looking directly at Melissa with surprising clarity. "Mom," she said, her voice small but steady, "if I don't get better, Don't talk like that, Melissa interrupted, alarmed. You're going to get better. But if I don't, Emma persisted with a child's blunt honesty. Will you be okay? Will Daddy be okay? The question struck Melissa like a physical blow. Even now, teetering on the edge of a medical crisis, Emma was worried about them. Oh, Emma, Melissa whispered, carefully gathering her daughter into her arms, mindful of the IV lines. That's not for you to worry about. Your job is to focus on getting better. Let the adults worry about adult things. But I'm good at worrying, Emma said with unexpected seriousness. I've had lots of practice. Melissa felt tears spill down her cheeks as the full weight of Emma's words hit her. Their 7-year-old had been carrying adult worries for so long that she considered it one of her skills. I'm so sorry we made you worry, Melissa said, her voice thick with emotion. But things are going to be different now. I promise. Outside the room, Robert arrived, breathless from running, his work uniform still on and his face lined with exhaustion. Through the glass, he saw his wife and daughter embracing, both of them small and vulnerable in the midst of machines and medical equipment. In that moment, watching them, Robert made a silent vow of his own, that regardless of what happened with his job, their finances, or anything else, he would never again let Emma or Melissa feel they had to face their monsters alone. 3 days in the pediatric ICU had felt like 3 years. Melissa and Robert had taken turns at Emma's bedside, neither willing to leave the hospital for more than a quick shower or change of clothes at home. The community had rallied around them, Mrs. Jenkins coordinating meal deliveries, Miss Wilson bringing schoolwork and messages from classmates, and even Melissa's supervisor from the supermarket stopping by with a card signed by all her co-workers. On the morning of the 4th day, Dr. Carter arrived with Dr. Hayes, both wearing cautiously optimistic expressions. Emma's latest blood work shows significant improvement, Dr. Hayes announced, showing them the chart where several lines had finally begun trending in the right direction. The new medication protocol seems to be working. So she's going to be okay? Robert asked, daring to hope. She's responding to treatment, Dr. Carter clarified carefully. The encephalopathy has cleared, and her liver function is stabilizing. But she held up a hand to temper their relief. This is just the beginning of what will be a marathon, not a sprint. Melissa nodded, understanding. In the past few days, she had educated herself about autoimmune hepatitis, reading medical websites on her phone during the long night watches. It's a chronic condition, she said. She'll need medication for years, maybe her whole life. Yes, Dr. Hayes confirmed, but with proper management, she can lead a normal, healthy life. The key is consistent medication, regular monitoring, and knowing the warning signs of a flare-up. Emma, who had been listening quietly from her bed, spoke up. Does that mean I can go home soon? The doctors exchanged glances. Not quite yet, Dr. Carter said gently. But we can move you out of the ICU today, back to a regular room. And if you continue improving, home might be possible in another week or so. Emma's face lit up with the first real smile they had seen in days. Can I have my drawing book back? Nurse Joy took it away when I was confused. Absolutely, Dr. Carter agreed. In fact, our child psychologist thinks your drawings are a wonderful way for you to express your feelings about your illness. Later that morning, as Emma was being settled into her new room, Linda Ramirez from Child Protective Services returned with a thick folder. I've been working on your family support plan, she explained, sitting with Melissa and Robert in the small consultation room. Given Emma's condition, she'll need consistent medical care and follow-up. I want to make sure you have all the resources necessary. Rather than the adversary they had initially perceived, Ms. Ramirez had become an unexpected ally, helping them navigate the complex healthcare system and apply for assistance programs. The hospital's charity care program has approved partial coverage of Emma's bills, she continued, showing them the paperwork. And I've enrolled you in the Children's Special Healthcare Program, which will help with her ongoing medication costs. Robert stared at the papers in disbelief. I don't understand. Why are you helping us like this? Ms. Ramirez's professional demeanor softened slightly. My job isn't to punish families, Mr. Thompson. It's to ensure children's well-being. Sometimes that means removing children from harmful situations, but more often it means connecting families with resources they didn't know existed. She closed the folder. Emma is a remarkable child. The way she processed her illness through her drawings, how she tried to protect you both from worry. She deserves every support we can provide. Back in Emma's room, Nurse Joy was helping her arrange her growing collection of Get Well cards on the windowsill when a familiar face appeared in the doorway, Miss Wilson, accompanied by a tablet computer. "I have a surprise for you," the teacher announced. "Your classmates want to say hello." She set up the tablet on Emma's tray table and initiated a video call. Suddenly, the screen filled with 20 excited third graders, all waving and calling Emma's name. "We miss you," they chorused. "Get better soon." Emma's eyes widened with delight as each child took a turn sending a personal message. When it was Lily's turn, the friend who had complained about Emma never playing anymore, she held up a drawing of two girls holding hands. "I'm sorry I didn't understand you were sick," Lily said solemnly. "When you come back, we can play whatever you want, even if it's just sitting under the tree." As the call ended, Emma looked thoughtfully at Miss Wilson. "They don't think I'm weird because I have monsters in my liver?" "Not at all," Miss Wilson assured her. "They think you're very brave, and they're learning an important lesson about how sometimes, when a friend is acting differently, it might be because they're facing a challenge we can't see." That evening, as Emma slept peacefully for the first time in days, Melissa and Robert sat together by her bedside, their hands intertwined. "We're going to get through this," Robert said with quiet determination. "All of us together." Melissa nodded, watching the gentle rise and fall of Emma's chest. "She's not closing her eyes to wait anymore," she observed. "She's just sleeping, like a regular kid." It was a small victory, but in that moment it felt monumental, the first step on a long road toward healing, not just for Emma's body, but for their family's soul. 2 weeks later, the Thompson home buzzed with activity as final preparations were made for Emma's homecoming. Mrs. Jenkins supervised a small army of neighborhood volunteers who had gathered to help, cleaning, organizing, and making the house as comfortable as possible for a recovering child. "The bathroom is spotless," announced Mrs. Parker from 2 doors down, hanging up her rubber gloves, "and I've put fresh towels on the racks." In the kitchen, Robert was installing a special medication organizer on the wall, a chart with clear compartments for each day of the week, morning and night doses clearly marked. His new manager at Lakeside Industries had proven unexpectedly understanding, adjusting his schedule to allow for Emma's medical appointments and recovery needs. "The refrigerator is stocked with healthy options," Mrs. Jenkins reported, closing the door on fruits, vegetables, and pre-prepared meals that neighbors had contributed. "And I've marked all the foods Dr. Hayes said Emma should avoid with red stickers." The doorbell rang and Melissa hurried to answer it, finding Miss Wilson on the porch with a large canvas bag. "I brought Emma's schoolwork for the next 2 weeks," the teacher explained, "plus some extra art supplies. The principal approved my request to visit twice a week for home instruction until Emma's strong enough to return to class." Melissa blinked back tears. "I don't know how to thank all of you," she said, looking around at the neighbors who had come together for her family. "That's what community means," Mrs. Jenkins said simply. "When one of us needs help, we all step up." At Pinewood Memorial Hospital, Emma sat on the edge of her bed, fully dressed in regular clothes for the first time in weeks. Dr. Carter was reviewing discharge instructions with a nurse, while Emma swung her legs impatiently. "Can we go now?" she asked for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Dr. Carter smiled at her enthusiasm. "Almost. We just need to go over a few more things, and then you'll be on your way home." "Will the monsters come back if I go home?" Emma asked suddenly, her voice small. Dr. Carter sat beside her on the bed. "The medicine you'll be taking helps keep the monsters asleep," she explained, using Emma's terminology. "As long as you take it exactly as prescribed, they should stay quiet. But they might wake up sometimes." "They might try," Dr. Carter acknowledged honestly. "That's why you'll be coming back for regular checkups, so we can catch any problems early." Emma nodded thoughtfully. then reached for her drawing book. She flipped to her most recent illustration, a picture of herself standing tall, surrounded by sleeping monsters with Z's floating above their heads. "I drew this to remind myself," she explained. "Even when I can't see the monsters, I need to remember to take my medicine to keep them sleeping." Dr. Carter smiled at the wisdom in this simple drawing. "That's exactly right, Emma. You understand your condition very well." When Robert and Melissa arrived to take Emma home, they found her teaching Nurse Joy how to draw the good monsters, the medication and doctors who had helped her. "Look, Mom, Dad," Emma called excitedly. "I'm coming home today." The ride home was filled with Emma's constant commentary on everything she saw outside the car window, as if seeing the world with new eyes after her hospital stay. When they turned onto Maple Street, she pressed her face against the glass in surprise. "Why are there so many cars at our house?" As they pulled into the driveway, the front door opened, and a small crowd spilled onto the porch, a hand-painted banner hanging above them. "Welcome home, Emma." Mrs. Jenkins stood at the front, beaming. Miss Wilson was there with a small delegation of classmates, including Lily. Even Linda Ramirez had come, standing slightly apart but smiling warmly. "They all came for me," Emma whispered, awestruck. "They all care about you," Melissa confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Inside, the house had been transformed, not just cleaned and organized, but filled with small touches to help Emma's recovery. Her bedroom now featured a special table for art supplies, a bookshelf stocked with new books, and a colorful chart on the wall for tracking medication. As the small welcome party mingled in the living room, Emma tugged on Mrs. Jenkins's sleeve. "Can I still help in your garden sometimes?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course, dear," Mrs. Jenkins replied, "but we'll make a special section just for you, all safe plants that you can touch and even taste if you want. I've been learning about medicinal herbs that are completely safe, and I thought you might help me grow them." Emma's face lit up. "Like real medicine plants? Not pretend ones?" "Real ones," Mrs. Jenkins confirmed. "Mint for upset tummies, chamomile for relaxation, and others that have been helping people feel better for hundreds of years." As the afternoon wore on, Emma grew tired but resisted going to her room, not wanting the celebration to end. Finally, Melissa noticed her drooping eyelids and gently suggested a rest. "Will everyone still be here when I wake up?" Emma asked anxiously. "Some might need to go home," Melissa explained, "but they'll all come back to visit soon. And we'll be here, Dad and I, right beside you. Always." As Emma settled into her own bed for the first time in weeks, she looked around at her familiar room, now filled with cards, gifts, and reminders of how many people cared about her. "I don't need to close my eyes and wait anymore," she said softly as Melissa tucked the blanket around her. "Because now I know I'm not alone with the monsters." The simple statement, delivered with a child's directness, captured everything that had changed. Emma had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that sharing her pain, rather than hiding it, had brought healing in ways medicine alone never could. 3 months had passed since Emma's return home, and the seasons had shifted from spring to summer. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Pinewood Memorial Hospital as Emma sat swinging her legs in the outpatient clinic, waiting for her quarterly checkup with Dr. Carter. She no longer feared these visits. The hospital had transformed in her mind from a place of scary monsters to a place where helpers lived, doctors and nurses who kept the real monsters inside her at bay. "Emma Thompson," called the nurse. "Dr. Carter will see you now." Emma hopped down from her chair, her colorful backpack bouncing against her back. Inside were her medications, her ever-present drawing book, and a special surprise she had worked on for weeks. "There's my favorite artist." Dr. Carter greeted her with a warm smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Good," Emma replied with genuine enthusiasm. "I went back to school full-time last week and I can play at recess again, not just sit under the tree." Dr. Carter reviewed Emma's charts and recent lab results, nodding with satisfaction. "Your liver function tests look excellent. The medication is doing its job." Melissa, who had been quietly observing, exhaled with relief. Each good report felt like another step away from the terrifying days in the ICU. "And how about the other things we talked about?" Dr. Carter asked Emma. Are you telling your parents when you don't feel well? Emma nodded solemnly. I have a special code. If the monsters are stirring, I say yellow light. If they're really active, I say red light. That's brilliant, Dr. Carter praised. And have there been many yellow or red lights? A few yellows when I get really tired, Emma admitted. But no red since I came home. After completing the examination, Dr. Carter sat down at eye level with Emma. You know, you've taught me something important, Emma. I have. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. Yes, your phrase, I just close my eyes and wait, made me think about how many children might be suffering silently, waiting for someone to notice. Because of you, we've started a new program in the pediatric department, teaching kids to speak up about their pain. Emma's face flushed with pride. Really? Really, Dr. Carter confirmed. Sometimes the most powerful teachers are the smallest ones. Emma reached into her backpack. I made something for you, she said, pulling out a carefully wrapped package. For your new program. Dr. Carter unwrapped it to find a colorful painting, clearly done with great care and attention. It showed a child with eyes wide open, surrounded by friendly-looking doctors and nurses. Above them all, in Emma's neat printing, were the words, Don't wait, speak up. Emma, this is beautiful, Dr. Ann. Carter said, genuinely moved. May I hang this in our pediatric waiting room? Emma nodded, beaming. That's why I made it. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Carter reminded them of the importance of continued vigilance. Autoimmune hepatitis is a lifelong condition, but with proper management, Emma can do everything other children do. Just remember that her medication is non-negotiable, and any signs of a flare-up need immediate attention. We understand, Robert assured her. We've learned our lesson about waiting too long. Outside the hospital, the sunshine felt especially bright. Emma skipped ahead to the car, her energy level a testament to her recovery. Wait up, speedster, Melissa called with a laugh. Emma turned, her face radiant. I don't want to wait anymore, Mom. I've done enough waiting. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a new ritual they maintained regardless of work schedules, Emma shared her excitement about the painting and Dr. Carter's program. Do you think my story might help other kids? She asked, twirling spaghetti on her fork. I know it will, Melissa assured her. You've already helped our whole family learn how important it is to listen to each other, even when we're busy or tired. Robert nodded in agreement. And you've helped our community too, Mrs. Jenkins told me that 3 other families on our street have started checking in with their kids more regularly about how they're feeling, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. After dinner, as twilight softened the edges of the day, Emma sat on the porch steps with her drawing book, but instead of monsters, she was sketching her family, their house, and the neighbors who had become such an important part of their lives. What are you drawing now? Melissa asked, sitting beside her. My real life, Emma replied simply. Not the monsters anymore. Do you still think about them? Melissa asked gently. Emma considered this, her pencil pausing on the page. Sometimes. But now I know what to do when they try to wake up. She looked up at her mother with wise eyes that had seen more than a child should. I don't close my eyes anymore. I open them wider and tell someone who can help. Melissa wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, marveling at the resilience of this small person who had faced such big challenges. That's a lesson many adults still need to learn, she said softly. Inside the house, the medication chart hung prominently on the wall, a daily reminder of what was needed to keep Emma healthy. But beyond the medicine and doctor visits, they had found an equally powerful treatment, the healing force of a family that truly saw each other, a community that cared, and a little girl brave enough to finally open her eyes and speak her truth instead of silently waiting for the pain to pass. And in hospitals and schools across Pinewood, a simple message was spreading, inspired by Emma's journey. Sometimes the quietest cries for help are the ones we most need to hear.